Hey guys, welcome back tonight. We're going somewhere specific. Somewhere you think you know from the black and white movies and the sepia toned photographs. Picture it. Manhattan, 1938. 2 o'clock in the morning. The great roaring beast of a city that never sleeps is fine, and you're tucked away in a tiny radio booth, a solitary island in a sea of silence, with only the holy red glow of a single on-air light for company. You are the impossibly cool, velvet-voiced phantom of the airwaves, spinning smooth jazz and reading hushed poetry to the lonely hearts and the sleepless souls of the metropolis. You are the keeper of the city's secrets, the Sandman of the radio age. It's a beautiful, deeply romantic image, isn't it? A warm, analog dream of a bygone era. Well, I want you to take that beautiful, romantic image, wad it up into a little ball, and toss it into the nearest garbage can. It's a carefully constructed piece of fiction we've sold ourselves, because the reality is so profoundly, unpleasantly sticky. The truth is, you, with your memory foam mattress and your Himalayan salt lamp, would not survive a single shift in that booth. You would be clawing at the walls, begging for your sterile, air-conditioned cubicle and your curated Spotify playlist before the first record finished spinning. Dim the lights, take a deep breath, and prepare to be deeply, deeply grateful for your noise. Cancelling headphones and the miracle of central air. Congratulations. The year is 1938. The city is New York. And you are a ghost before your time. Speaking into a machine. The room is small. A closet, really. And it's been designed with one purpose in mind: to kill sound. It accomplishes this with all the brutalist efficiency of the age. The walls are not covered in the neat, sculpted acoustic foam you're imagining. This is the budget. Friendly, pre-war version of soundproofing. Thick, sagging panels of what looks and feels like industrial-grade felt. The colour of old dishwater, tacked directly to the walls. It's pockmarked with stains of mysterious origin and has the distinct, cloying smell of a wet dog that's been sleeping on a pile of damp newspapers. Over here, a dark patch suggests a long-forgotten leak. Over there, a constellation of smaller spots look suspiciously like the aftermath of a violent sneeze. This is your premium workspace, your soundscape sanctuary. The air itself is there is no ventilation. The tube amplifier, your connection to the outside world, glows with a series of dull orange smiles. It's a beautiful piece of machinery, in the way a furnace is beautiful. It radiates a dry, intense heat that bakes the tiny room, raising the temperature to a consistent sweat-inducing fug. The heat cooks the dust, the old paper, the glue in the walls, and you, creating a unique signature scent for the room. It's a complex bouquet of hot metal, ozone, stale cigarette smoke that has seeped into the very fabric of the building, and the faint, acidic tang of your own, slowly simmering anxiety. You can feel a single bead of sweat detach from your hairline and begin a slow, treacherous journey down the side of your face. You don't dare wipe it. The microphone would hear, "Ah." The silence. The soundproofing works. It works terrifying. It's a heavy, weighted blanket of quiet that presses in on you from all sides. You can hear the frantic, thumping drum of your own heart against your ribs. You can hear the distant, embarrassing gurgle of your digestive system processing that questionable diner sandwich you had for dinner. A low, persistent hum from the amplifier's transformers has burrowed its way into your skull. It's not the warm, friendly hum of nostalgia. It's a low-frequency drill, a 60-cycle hum that vibrates in your molars and feels like the sound of dread itself. This is your ASMR. This is your ambient soundscape for focus. Enjoy it. For the next 4 hours, This coffin is your world. Let's talk about your tool. In front of you, it looks like it was designed to broadcast the voice of God. It is, without question, the most expensive and important object in the room. It is also your sworn enemy. This, you have to address it with the delicate precision of a bomb disposal expert. Too close, and the plosives in your words, the P's and B's, will sound like cannon fire, a percussive explosion that could get you fired. Too far away, and your voice becomes a thin, reedy whisper, lost in the static. You have to find the sweet spot, a precise and unforgiving zone in the air about 6 inches from the grill, and you have to stay there for hours. No leaning back, no shifting in your hard, unforgiving wooden chair, no turning your head to cough. The microphone demands your complete and total submission. It owns your posture. It owns your breath. Next to the microphone is your script, a stack of cheap cream-coloured paper, still warm from the typewriter. Some letters are faint ghosts, others are thick, black wounds in the paper. As you run your fingers over the page, preparing for the next segment, the sound is magnified 1,000 times by the microphone. The dry rasp of your skin against the cheap pulp of the paper becomes a deafening roar of static, a sound like sandpaper on wood. This is the texture of your profession. You have to move with an unnatural slowness, a deliberate grace, lifting each page from the top and placing it silently to the side. One clumsy fumble, one accidental crinkle, and the entire city of insomniacs will hear it. They will know you are not the effortless, ethereal voice you pretend to be. They will know you are just a man in a hot box, sweating through his shirt, fighting with a stack of paper. And then there are the records. These are not the 12-inch. They are thick, heavy, and brittle as a cracker. You can feel the microscopic grooves, the encoded memory of some long-gone jazz trio playing their hearts out in a studio across town. You place it gently on the turntable's felt mat. This, too, is a delicate operation. A clumsy drop, a slight crack, and the record is ruined. That's a deduction from your already pathetic paycheck. The station manager, a man whose face seems permanently locked in a state of sour disapproval, will make sure of it. You cue the needle. The toniarm is a heavy piece of industrial equipment, not the delicate, counterweighted marvel of a modern turntable. You lower it by hand as the steel needle makes contact with the outer edge of the shellac. That's when you hear it. That sound, that long, warm, crackling hiss. We hear it now and think, vintage, authentic, cozy. You hear it and think surface noise. It's the sound of a primitive technology doing its best. That hiss is a constant battle. You have to ride the gain, adjusting the volume to make sure your voice cuts through it, but not so much that the hiss becomes a distraction. Those pops and crackles, the ones people pay to have added as a digital filter, now those are your professional failures. Each pop is a tiny speck of dust, a microscopic scratch, a flaw in the pressing. You know that somewhere out there 100,000 lonely people are listening to this hiss, this rain of static, and they are finding comfort in it. You are the architect of that comfort, and all you can hear are the flaws. All you can feel is the sweat trickling down your spine. You lean into the microphone, into that 6-inch bubble of perfect sound. The red light is on. You are live. That was the incomparable Teddy Wilson on the ivories. It took you years to perfect that sound, to sand the edges off your own anxiety and deliver something smooth and polished. But now comes the part of the job that actually pays the bills. You pick up the next page of the script, the ad copy. The silence in the booth is absolute. made from a gentle, all-natural blend of senna leaf and pure cane molasses. Dr. Abernathy's provides swift, dependable relief. Just one tablet before bed, and you'll wake up feeling light, refreshed, and ready to face the day. Dr. Abernathy's PEP Ulax. Ask for it by name at your local druggist. This is your contribution to the culture. The good news is, the ad revenue from Dr. Abernathy keeps the station on the air. The bad news is, you have to say the words dependable. After the laxative AD, there's one for a brand of cigarettes that promises a cooler, smoother smoke, thanks to a revolutionary new filter that is probably made of asbestos, followed by a spot for a hair tonic that claims to reverse baldness using a proprietary blend of mineral oil and industrial solvents. You are a poet of commerce, a purveyor of snake oil, a well-spoken cog in the great grinding machine of American capitalism, which is itself just barely recovering from a catastrophic system failure. This job isn't a calling. It's a lifeline. It's 1938. It's the reason your suit is a little too shiny at the elbows, and the soles of your shoes are worn dangerously thin. You see the breadlines every single day on your way to work. You see the hollowed out look in men's eyes as they stand on street corners, selling apples or just standing this job, this 4-horse shift in a sweltering box talking to no one, is the only thing standing between you and that. A flubbed line, a cracked record, a coughing fit on air. Any one of these could be the end. There are 100 other guys with voices just as smooth as yours, who would kill to have this job, who would kill to sit in this hot, smelly room and read ads for laxatives. So you don't complain, you just sweat, and you read the words, and you pray the tubes in the amplifier don't blow. After 2 hours in the chair, your back has started to ache. It's a dull, persistent pain that starts in your lower lumbar and radiates outwards. The chair has no concept of ergonomics. It was designed to be a chair, and that is the beginning and end of its ambition. Your shirt, which was crisp and white when you put it on, is now damp and stuck to your skin. You can feel it clinging to your back and under your arms. Your throat is dry from talking into the dead, non-recirculating air, but you can only take small, cautious sips of water from the glass on your desk. Too much, and you'll have to run to the bathroom down the hall, leaving a record to spin for its full 3 minutes, and praying you can make it back before it ends. The silence on the radio is the ultimate sin-dead air. Your fingers are stained yellow with nicotine from the pack of cheap cigarettes you chain. Smoke between segments. So you wait for a song to play, crack the door, and stand in the dim, dusty hallway, pulling the smoke in deep and fast, trying to absorb enough nicotine to get you through the next block of poetry and patent medicine. The cigarette does not taste good. The combination of the heat, the low, level hum, the caffeine from the burnt coffee you drank hours ago, and the intense focus required to not screw up has given you a headache. It's a tight band of pressure just behind your eyes. As her voice, fragile and yet impossibly strong, fills the tiny room, you have a moment of respite. For 2 minutes and 54 seconds, you can close your eyes. But the illusion shatters the moment the song ends. The silence rushes back in, heavier than before. The hum in your teeth returns. The headache throbs. The sticky feeling of your shirt reappears. The loneliness is not shared, it is magnified. You are speaking into a void. You receive no feedback, no comments, no likes, no real-time analytics. Does anyone? It's just you and the night watchman down the hall. You have no way of knowing. You are throwing your voice out into an ocean of static, hoping it washes up on some distant shore. It is the loneliest form of communication imaginable. The final hour of your shift is a blur of fatigue. You're running on fumes, Your voice is getting rough around the edges. Finally, mercifully, it's 5:58 a.m. time for your sign-off. You've been saving your best for last. You lean in one more time, your lips almost brushing the cool metal of the microphone. And that, my friends, is all the time we have. Be good to yourselves and to each other. You play your outro theme, a slow, mournful piano piece. As it plays, you flick a switch. The hum from the amplifier is still there, but without the pressure of performance, it seems less menacing. Just a tired old machine humming to itself. You sit for a moment in the thick, hot dark, the ghost of Billie Holiday and Dr. Abernathy's pep. You lack still hanging in the air. You put on your coat, which feels heavy and smells faintly of rain and coal smoke. You gather your things and step out of the booth, closing the thick felt-lined door behind you. The sound of the world rushes back in, the distant clatter of the hallway, the groan of the building's steam pipes. It's a relief. You walk down 5 flights of dusty stairs, because the building's elevator is notoriously unreliable and smells like a chemistry experiment gone wrong. You push open the heavy front door and step out onto the streets of Manhattan. The sun is not yet up, but the sky is a bruised purple-grey. The air is cool, and it carries the smells of the city waking up, the exhaust from a delivery truck, the scent of baking bread from a nearby bakery, and the ever-present underlying smell of garbage and damp asphalt. The street cleaners have not yet made their rounds, so the gutters are still choked with the detritus of the previous day. You sidestep a pile of horse manure, a reminder that this city of the future is still tethered to its past. Your apartment is a 15-minute walk away, a 4th floor walk, up in a tenement building on the Lower East Side. You arrive at your building. The hallway smells of boiled cabbage, stale beer, and the collective unvarnished lives of 20 other families packed into a space meant for half that. You climb the 4 flights of stairs, each one creaking under your weight. Home, a single room with a bed, a sink, and a hot plate. You don't have to use it right now, which is good news, because Mrs. Goldstein in 4B is an early riser and probably in there as we speak. You sit on the edge of your bed. The mattress is lumpy and sags in the middle. It has no memory and offers no comfort. Through the thin walls, you can hear the neighbor's baby starting to cry. This single grim room is the grand prize. This is what you work for. This is what you endure the hot, lonely box for, night after night. You pull down the cracked window shade, but the thin fabric can't block out the growing light or the rising sounds of the city. You lie down, fully clothed, too tired to do anything else. You close your eyes. So the next time you hear that warm, nostalgic crackle from a vinyl record, or see a movie about the golden age of radio, I want you to remember this. Remember the heat. Remember the smell. Remember the crushing loneliness and the constant, gnawing fear of failure. Remember the laxative ads. The past is not a cozy, comfortable place. It's a foreign country, and they do things terribly there. The romance we project onto it is a defense mechanism, a way to forget how unbelievably, grindingly, miserably hard it was to just exist. Be grateful for your sterile office. Be grateful for your ergonomic chair. Be grateful for your climate control and your instant global communication. Be grateful that your job, no matter how tedious, probably doesn't require you to be a poet for constipation. Because you are the lucky one. You get to listen to the old records without having to live in the world that made them. That hiss. That's the sound you're paid to create. The sound of a diamond needle dragging itself through a canyon of shellac. It's not a clean sound. It's not digital. It's the sound of friction. The sound of something physical being worn down, molecule by molecule, to create a ghost in the air. In the movies, This is the sound of romance. It's the prelude to a slow dance, a whispered secret, a tender kiss in the rain. For you, it's the sound of the clock starting. Each little pop and crackle is a tiny explosion, a memory of a fleck of cigarette ash from the last guy who had this shift, or a particle of skin you shed yesterday, or just a flaw in the pressing from a factory in Camden, New Jersey, where a man who was just as tired as you are now didn't quite clean the mold. You know this because you can hear it all. In this tomb of a room, your ears have become microscopes. The red on-air light isn't just a warning. It's the only source of colour in your world, and it's the colour of a stop sign, the colour of an open wound. It doesn't hum, it doesn't flicker, it just burns. A silent, perpetual judgment. It's a constant, low-grade threat display that says, "The world is listening." You could lie down in here if you curled up. The walls are covered not with modern, sculpted acoustic foam, but with thick, scratchy panels of what feels like compressed horsehair and industrial felt, all tacked into place and painted a colour you can only describe as institutional despair. It's a faded, defeated grey that has absorbed decades of stale air and quiet desperation. The smell, oh God, the smell, it's the first thing that hits you when you slide the heavy, soundproofed door shut, and the last thing you taste on the back of your tongue when you leave. It's a complex and offensive cocktail. The top note is hot dust, not the gentle dust of an old library. This is the angry, scorched dust that cooks on the surface of the vacuum tubes in the amplifier beside you. It's a dry, metallic, electric smell, like a toaster that's about to catch fire. Underneath that is the bass note, old cigarette smoke, a permanent ghost, the man you replaced. Smoked 2 packs a night in this chair. It's not the pleasant aroma of a freshly lit Chesterfield. It's the sour, acrid stench of a cold, overflowing ashtray. It's the smell of yellowed teeth and a hacking cough. You don't smoke, but you're pretty sure your lungs are aging in dog years just by sitting here. And finally, there's you, the human element. It's your own sweat, beading on your forehead under the relentless focused heat of the single bare bulb overhead, which is positioned perfectly to glare off your script. The air in here doesn't move. There is no ventilation. So you just sit here, slowly simmering in a marinade of your own bodily functions. Every time you shift in your squeakless, heavily oiled wooden chair, you can feel the damp fabric pull away from your skin with a faint, tacky resistance claustrophobia. That's the brand identity. Now, let's consider your tools. That microphone, it's a beautiful object, isn't it? An RCA Type 44. It costs more than your apartment. It costs more than you'll make in 6 months. And it is actively trying to ruin your career. A ribbon microphone contains a strip of aluminium foil, impossibly thin, thinner than a human hair, suspended between 2 powerful magnets, your voice. The actual pressure of the sound waves leaving your mouth causes this ribbon to vibrate. That vibration is what becomes the electrical signal. That's the magic. The problem is that ribbon is fragile, breathtakingly, absurdly fragile. You can't talk directly into it. If you do, the plosive, the puff of air from a P or a B will hit that ribbon like a hurricane hitting a kite. At best, it creates a deafening pop that will make every listener in the city jump out of their skin. At worst, it will stretch or even snap the ribbon, rendering this $1,000 piece of art a useless paperweight, and getting it fixed. That involves sending it back to the factory and a conversation with the station manager that you would rather avoid forever. So you've learnt the technique. Too close. And the proximity effect makes your voice a booming, muddy mess. Too far, and you sound thin and lost in the static. You are tethered to this spot, the glowing heart of the operation, a rack of vacuum tubes, a very, very inefficient space heater that turns 90% of its electricity into pure ambient heat that has nowhere to go but into your already suffocating little room. That faint, low-frequency hum you can hear, the 60-cycle hum of the American electrical grid. It's also the sound of imminent failure. One of those tubes could go at any moment. It could die with a gentle fade, or it could pop like a firecracker, taking the whole broadcast with it into a screeching hell of feedback. You have a spare set of tubes in a box under the console. You have no idea how to change them. You just know that if one of them goes dark, you have to call an engineer named Frank, wake him up, and listen to him curse your name for the next 20 minutes before he even agrees to get out of bed. Your job is to keep the magic glowing embers. Glowing, you look down at your script. The ink is faded in places, blurry in others. The paper is slightly damp, already absorbing the humidity you're generating just by being alive in here. The rustle it makes is a dry, intimate sound, amplified in the silence. It sounds loud. It sounds like you're crumpling a bag of leaves. You have to turn the pages with the stealth of a cat burglar, slowly, carefully, lifting from the corner and laying it down as if it were a holy relic. Any sudden movement will sound like a thunderclap to the insomniac listening in his lonely boarding house room. A little light jazz, a little poetry. You get a stack of records from the station's library, approved by management tonight. You know every click and pop on this specific disc. You know that on Sing, 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 there's a deep scratch about 2 minutes in that makes the needle jump, and you have to be ready to nudge the tone arm ever so slightly to keep it on track. Your job is to be a human anti-skip feature. And the poetry. You're not reading T.S. Eliot or Ezra Pound. You're reading a collection of sonnets titled Whispers of the Hudson by a man named Arthur Pendleton. It's a series of clumsy rhymes about skyscrapers and loneliness that sound like they were written as a high school assignment. A bad high school assignment. Your job is to read these sentimental scribblings with a voice of profound, world-weary gravity. You have to sell this garbage as if it were Shakespeare. You have to find the soul in lines like, "The city's lights, a lonely lover's plea, Finn. Oh, how my heart does ache for thee." You feel a familiar knot of professional shame tighten in your gut. This isn't art. This is a hostage situation, and your dignity is the ransom. But before you can bless the 5 boroughs with Arthur's genius, there's business to attend to. Tonight's sponsor is Dr. Abernathy's Calming Tonic for the Modern Nerve. You scan the text. Do you find yourself tossing and turning, your mind a whirlwind of worry? The irony is a physical thing. It tastes like copper. The tonic, you happen to know from the ingredients list you saw once, is about 25% grain alcohol, with a little bit of sugar and some herbal flavoring to make it seem medicinal. You're basically selling bootleg hooch to anxious people in the middle of the night. The good news is, it probably works. The bad news is, you're a glorified, federally licensed snake oil salesman. You have to read these words with sincerity. You have to make Dr. Abernathy's sugar, booze sound like the key to unlocking inner peace, all while your own nerves are screaming from the heat, the pressure, and the sheer, soul-crushing boredom of it all. The needle continues its slow, crackling journey toward the center of the record. The music hasn't started yet, just that long, introductory hiss. That's your cue. You put on your headphones. The experience changes instantly. The world outside vanishes. The faint hum of the amplifier is now a solid, tangible presence directly inside, a deep, abyssal quiet. You can hear the tiny clicks and movements of the joints in your jaw. You can hear the wet, sticky sound your tongue makes as it peels away from the roof of your mouth, and you hear the record not as a distant sound in the room, but as a direct injection into your brain. You can hear the ghost of the music, the faint echo from the groove walls before it even begins. It's a raw, naked, unforgiving sound. This is what you're sending out into the ether, this flawed, dusty, crackling signal, and your voice is about to join it. You clear your throat. A tiny, preparatory rumble in the headphones. It sounds like a landslide. You swallow, it's a wet, gulping, cavernous sound. You have become terrifyingly aware of the mechanics of your own body, of the frail, wet machinery you use to produce speech. It all sounds so biological, so disgustingly human, and you're about to lay it bare for thousands of strangers to hear. You lean in, the proper angle, the proper distance. The silver zeppelin of the microphone waits, impassive, the dry crackle of your lips parting. It will take the messy, organic reality of your voice and turn it into an electrical ghost, a disembodied whisper in 1,000 darkened rooms. The intro music is about to fade. The first track on the Goodman record is a slow, mournful clarinet piece. It's your lead. In you have about 10 seconds. You take a breath, not too deep. You don't want a gasp of air hitting the ribbon. It feels like breathing wool. The single red eye of the on-air light seems to brighten, to focus on you with malevolent intensity. This is the moment, the transition from silence to sound, the moment you cease to be a sweaty man in a hot box and become a voice, a presence, a disembodied companion for the lonely. They don't know about the heat, or the smell, or the terrible poetry written by the boss's nephew. They don't know about the fragile ribbon, or the humming tubes, or the cheap sticky paper under your fingertips. They just know the voice. They need it to be calm, confident, reassuring. They need it to be a lighthouse in the storm of their own thoughts. You have to manufacture that calm. You have to build that confidence out of nothing but air and muscle. You are an actor, and your audience is the entire population of a city that never sleeps, but is desperately trying to. The clarinet sighs its last long note. The music fades into the bed of vinyl crackle silence. The silence stretches. Zone second 2. The dramatic pause. In reality, you're just giving yourself one last second to make sure you don't throw up. You open your mouth. The microphone is waiting. Cold. Silent. The needle finds its groove. That sound. That glorious, cascading rustle of dust and static. It's the sound of a promise, a sonic handshake with the lonely, the worried, the sleepless souls scattered across the 5 boroughs like spilled ashes. For them, it's a warm blanket stitched from static and shellac. For you, it's the sound of the clock starting. It's the sound of another tightrope, walk over a canyon of dead air, armed with nothing but a stack of paper, a few dozen breakable discs, and a voice you pray doesn't crack. The myth, of course, is that you are the calm eye of the storm, the velvet, voiced ferryman guiding the city's lost souls to the shores of slumber. You are the maestro of midnight, the curator of cool, a disembodied friend whispering comfort directly into the collective ear of the metropolis. The reality is that your stomach is performing a gurgling, acidic symphony of its own, thanks to a questionable 5-cent hot dog you bought from a street cart that smelled faintly of despair and boiled onions. Let's focus on the machine in front of you, that microphone in the movies. It's a beautiful silver icon, a gleaming totem of the golden age of radio. Up close, it's an RCA Type 44, a monstrously heavy ribbon microphone that costs more than you make in 6 months. It's also as temperamental as a teething toddler. You don't just speak into it. You negotiate with it. You have to maintain a precise distance, a conversational DMZ, too close. And every wet click of your tongue, every subtle intake of breath, becomes a grotesque percussive event. The plosives, your P's and B's, will hit the delicate ribbon inside like a boxer's jab, sending a distorted thump across the airwaves that makes it sound like someone is dropping a bag of wet cement in the studio, too far away, and your voice becomes thin, reedy, lost in the ever-present hum of the vacuum tubes. So you sit, ramrod straight, in a chair designed by someone who clearly hated the human spine, keeping that perfect distance. You feel a tickle in your throat. A cough is coming. You absolutely cannot cough. Coughing into this microphone, live on air, is the auditory equivalent of a public execution. You deafen half of Brooklyn and get a pink slip before the echo died down. Hard. You imagine thousands of listeners in their lonely beds, hearing that sudden, intimate sound and shuddering. The paper in your hands feels both flimsy and heavy. It's a script, of a sort, a list of songs, a few lines of poetry you typed up yourself on a noisy underwood, the rustle of turning a page, a sound you never notice in life, becomes a deafening forest fire through the microphone. You've learnt the technique. A slow, deliberate peel, lifting the corner and bending it back with the patient. Silent grace of a bomb disposal expert. One clumsy fumble, and it sounds like you're wrestling a cat in a paper bag. Your fingers, stained with ink and nicotine, trace the typewritten words. The light from the single bulb above casts long shadows, making the letters swim. You're tired. Of course you're tired. Your sleep schedule isn't a schedule. It's a vague suggestion that your body usually ignores. You live your life in reverse, a vampire fueled by bad coffee and the dregs of the day's news. The first track is ending. A slow, mournful trumpet solo is fading into the gentle hiss of the record's surface. It's time for you to talk. That was Bix Beiderbecke, you say, your voice a carefully constructed fiction of calm. Sing in the blues. A little something for those of you out there staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks and wondering what comes next. You have to believe someone is listening, that you're screaming into a vacuum, and trusting that, somewhere, it's being heard. Maybe it's a night watchman in a warehouse down by the docks, the smell of fish and river water thick in his nostril. Maybe it's a nurse on the graveyard shift at Bellevue, the antiseptic quiet of the ward punctuated only by your voice from a small radio on her desk. Maybe it's a stockbroker who lost everything in '29 and still can't sleep a decade later, the phantom ticker tape still rattling in his head. You are their companion. The good news is, they need you. The bad news is, they have no idea that you are just as lost as they are. This is 1938. Your records are made of shellac. They are thick, heavy, and as brittle as a rich man's promise. Dropping one is not an option. It doesn't just scratch. It shatters. The paper sleeve, you slide the disc out, careful to only touch the edges and the label. A single greasy fingerprint can add a permanent, rhythmic thump to a quiet piano passage. There is no anti-skate technology. There is just your own caffeine, addled, sleep-deprived hand, lifting a heavy metal arm with a steel needle on the end, and placing it onto the spinning razor-thin edge of the record's lead. In groove, your hand trembles. If you drop it, you'll gouge the shellac, creating a skip that will haunt that record forever. If you place it too gently, it might skate across the first few bars of the song. A screeching disaster. You hold your breath. You've successfully operated the multi-$1,000 audio equipment without destroying it. Your reward is that you get to do it again in about 3 minutes. This isn't a premium subscription service with an infinite, flawless library. This is a delicate, physical, high-stakes performance. You are slowly, audibly destroying the music you're paid to share. It's a beautiful, pointless, and deeply sad metaphor for just about everything else in 1938. Let's talk about the music itself. Your station manager, a man named Henderson, whose face is permanently clenched in a state of mild panic, is always one angry phone call away from telling you to stick to Perry Como. So while you're spinning these records, you're not just a DJ, you're a cultural combatant. You're pushing something new, something vital and raw and beautiful, into the ether. But it's a risk. The good news is, you're on the right side of history. The bad news is, history doesn't pay this month's rent. And the poetry. You clear your throat, quietly this time, and pull the next sheet of paper toward you. I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. You can feel it travelling out from the antenna on the roof. A wave of elegant misery washing over the sleeping, and not so sleeping city. You think about the coffee in your own thermos. It's bitter. You brewed it 6 hours ago on a hot plate in the station's sad little break room, which is really just a clod. The coffee tastes like burnt earth and regret. You've measured out your own life in it, and you're not even halfway through the night. Let's get personal. Let's get uncomfortably close. Inside your mouth, on the upper left side, is a molar with a persistent, low-grade throb. It's been there for weeks. Sometimes it's a dull ache. Other times, it's a grim transaction involving pliers, questionable anesthetics, and a man who probably learned his trade through a mail order catalogue. Going to the dentist means confronting a bill you can't pay, and a level of pain you're not sure you can endure. So you ignore it. You chew on the other side of your mouth. You swish lukewarm coffee over it, hoping the heat will dull the nerve. And when you're on the air, talking in your smooth, reassuring baritone, that little pulse of agony is always there. A secret metronome of decay, ticking away behind your carefully chosen words. Your suit jacket is draped over the back of your chair. It's your only one. It's made of wool. It perpetually smells of cigarette smoke, both yours and the city's. The collar of your shirt is starched too stiffly, and it's chafing the back of your neck raw. It's a pretense of dignity in a profoundly undignified job. The red, it's the only colour in your world. Everything else is shades of grey and nicotine. Yellow, the foam itself, designed to kill any echo, is a marvel of acoustic engineering. It's also 20 years old, crumbling at the edges, and has absorbed 2 decades of stale air, sweat, and cigarette smoke, of countless other lonely nights spent in this very room by other tired men. The door to the booth has a small, thick glass window. You can't see much, just a sliver of the empty hallway outside. But you know what's out there. Henderson, the station manager, has an office down the hall. He's the one who reviews the listener mail, the few letters that trickle in, and scrutinizes the logs. He's the one who reminds you at least once a week that the station's sole major sponsor is a brand of laxatives. "Keep it smooth, kid," he'll say, clapping you on the shoulder, like a nice, easy bowel movement. That's your artistic direction. You are a human laxative. Your job is to soothe the city's colicky, anxious gut. You look at the clock on the wall. 2:17 a.m. Time feels different in here. It stretches and compresses. An hour can feel like a minute, and a 3-minute song can feel like an eternity, especially if you suddenly, desperately, have to use the bathroom. There are no commercial breaks on your show. There is no one to take over. It's just you. If you have to go, you have to find a 7-minute long record, cue it up, and sprint down the hall to the restroom. A grimy, water-stained affair with a single flickering bulb. And pray you make it back before the song ends. It's a game of bladder roulette. It's cold now. You could read the phone book aloud with a mouthful of marbles, and you'd get the same paycheck. assuming Henderson didn't fire you. That paycheck, when you get it, is already spent. A portion for the landlord of your tiny room in a boarding house. You are running on a treadmill, and the dial is permanently set to survival. This isn't a passion project. It's a job. It's the thing that stands between you and the breadline. You see those men every day, lining up for a bowl of thin soup and a piece of stale bread. Their faces are grey, their eyes hollow. They wear the same exhausted expression you see in your own shaving mirror. The only difference between you and them is this padded room and this silver microphone. The record is ending. The final notes fade. And that was the dupe, you say, your voice a low murmur. You glance at the newspaper you brought in with you, folded on the small shelf beneath the console. You already read it, but the headlines are seared into your brain. Another dust storm in Oklahoma. In Europe, a man with a ridiculous mustache is making speeches. He's loud, and people are listening. The newsreels show cheering crowds, endless ranks of soldiers, flags everywhere. It feels very far away, but also terrifyingly close. There's a tension in the air, a global static that's far more ominous than the hiss coming from your turntable. And here you are, in a padded box in the middle of Manhattan, playing jazz records and reading poetry. It feels absurd. What comfort can a saxophone solo offer against the rumble of tanks? What solace can a line of poetry provide to a world that seems to be losing its mind? But then you remember the letters, the few that make it past Henderson's desk. A shaky, handwritten note from an elderly woman in Queens, who says your show is the only thing that helps with her arthritis pain at night. A postcard from a truck driver who listens on a crackly radio as he hauls produce up from the south, saying you make the long, dark miles feel a little less lonely. They aren't listening for a solution. They're listening for a witness. They just want to know that someone else is awake in the dark with them. That's the job. You're not a maestro. You're not a ferryman. You're a lighthouse keeper. You're just tending a small, fragile light in the middle of a vast and gathering darkness, sending out a signal that you hope, you pray someone will see. The red light glows, the tubes in the amplifier hum their low, constant song. You reach for another record, heavy and black as a forgotten dream. The city outside is quiet now, but it's holding its breath. And you are here to provide the soundtrack for the long, anxious wait. You lean into the microphone, the cold metal a familiar and unforgiving presence. You open your mouth to speak, and the dull throb in your tooth flares. Just for a second, a sharp and secret reminder of the inescapable reality that lies beneath the smooth velvet illusion of your voice. The red light is on, that single, a universe that measures roughly 6 feet by 8 feet and smells faintly of stale cigarette smoke, overheated electronics, and the slow biological decay of every other poor soul who has sat in this chair before you. The walls are padded, not with the clean, sculpted acoustic foam of a modern recording studio. This is 1938's version of soundproofing. Thick, lumpy panels of what looks like industrial-grade felt. Tacked to the walls and ceiling, they are the colour of old mustard and feel greasy to the touch. Oh, it does its job magnificently. The silence it creates is absolute, a physical pressure against your eardrums. It's a silence so profound, you become acutely, uncomfortably aware of the symphony of your own internal functions. You can hear the soft, wet click of your eyelids as you blink. You can hear the whisper of air through your nostrils. Each breath, a tiny, personal weather system. You can hear the low, subterranean rumble of your own digestive tract, processing the lukewarm, gritty coffee you choked down an hour ago. And you pray, with a sudden, fervent intensity, that the microphone in front of you can't hear it too. It's a monument of polished silver, a gleaming heavy idol on a cast iron stand. It's more present in the room than you are. It's the real star of the show, and its job is to hear everything. It's designed to capture the subtle, velvet tones of a crooner, the mournful cry of a saxophone, which means it is also perfectly designed to capture the sound of you swallowing, the tiny crackle of your joints as you shift your weight, the almost imperceptible rustle of your shirt collar against your neck. You are a collection of undesirable audio artifacts, and your job is to somehow edit them out in real time, using only muscle control and sheer force of will. Your only companion in this padded cell is the hum. It's not the clean digital silence of the 21st century. It's the sound of electricity made manifest. The vacuum tubes in the amplifier next to you glow with a soft orange warmth, like embers in a dying fire. They are the source of the hum, a low, constant 60-cycle thrum that vibrates up through the floor, through the legs of your chair, and into your bones. It's the baseline of your existence. After an hour in the booth, you stop hearing it consciously, but it's still there, a foundational layer of noise upon which you must build a cathedral of calm. It's the sound of the machine that is keeping you alive, professionally speaking, and it never ever lets you forget it's there. You run a thumb over the script on the stand in front of you. The paper is thick, fibrous, and slightly damp from the humidity your own body has created in this airtight box. The text was hammered onto the page by a secretary with a heavy hand and a Remington typewriter. The ink is slightly smeared. Some of the letters, like the O and the E, are completely filled in, dark little voids of ink. Reading this aloud smoothly without stumbling is an act of low-grade clairvoyance. A bit of performative ASMR for the anxious masses. In here, it just sounds like failure scratching at the door. You turn, slowly, carefully, in your squeaky wooden chair. The squeak is your mortal enemy. Beside you is the altar, a massive, heavy platter turntable. It's thick, heavy, and brittle as a pane of glass. The sleeve leaves a fine white dust on the black surface. You give it a gentle puff of air, a futile gesture that mostly just relocates the dust. You place it on the platter. It settles with a satisfying solid thud. Now the needle. The tonium is a heavy piece of chrome and steel, and you lower it by hand. There is no gentle hydraulic cueing lever. There is only you, your slightly sweaty fingers, and a terrifyingly small target on the outer groove. Your hand has to be perfectly steady. A tremor, a twitch, a premature drop, and you'll send a sound like a gunshot across the entire city's radio waves. A sound that will jolt every one of your sleeping listeners awake and possibly cost you your job. That long, drawn-out hiss, peppered with pops and crackles. The romanticized sound of an era, the warmth of analog. Let's be clear about what you're actually hearing. You are hearing a physical groove, carved into a disc, being scraped by a rock. You are hearing every particle of dust, every microscopic scratch, its damage. Is it just a pop, or is it the beginning of a skip? Is the needle about to get stuck, turning Duke Ellington into a looping, stuttering madman, repeating the same two notes over and over and over again until you can lunge for the tonium? You listen to that crackle not with nostalgia, but with the focused dread of a bomb disposal expert listening to a ticking clock. This is your job, to sit in a hot, dark, silent box, surrounded by primitive, temperamental technology, and pretend that the voice you are projecting, a slow, smooth, reassuring baritone, has any connection to the tense, sweating, anxious man producing it. You are a human audio filter, a living, breathing anxiety, to serenity converter. The red light judges you, the microphone scrutinizes you, the hum reminds you. You lean in, closer to the silver idol. You clear your throat, a tiny internal movement that you pray is silent. You wet your lips. You are a performer, an actor, and your stage is the imagination of 1,000 strangers lying awake in the dark. They picture you in a spacious wood-panelled room, a glass of whiskey at your elbow, a curl of blue smoke rising from a cigarette. They imagine you are the epitome of late-night cool, a man who understands the soul of the city. The reality is this suffocating closet. The reality is the drip of sweat tracing a path down your spine, sticking your shirt to your skin. The reality is the faint, acrid smell of ozone from the hot electronics. The reality is your back aching from a chair that has all the ergonomic consideration of a packing crate. The reality is that your last drink was that burnt, tasting coffee, and if you lit a cigarette in here, you'd probably pass out from oxygen deprivation in about 5 minutes. You are not the voice of the city. You are its prisoner. A well-spoken hostage. Welcome back, you say, your voice a stranger in your own ears. Impossibly smooth, impossibly calm. That was the incomparable Coleman Hawkins with Body and Soul, a sound for the lonely hours. For all of you out there, watching the city lights from your window, wondering what comes next. What a line. You read it off the page, but you feel like a complete fraud. Another day of stretching a can of beans to feed a family of 4. Another day of living with the low, constant hum of the Great Depression, a sound far more pervasive than the one coming from your amplifier. A man lies awake in a cold water flat in the Lower East Side, coughing up something he knows is more than just a cold, listening to your voice, because the silence is filled with the sound of his own mortality. A woman in a cramped Brooklyn apartment stares at the ceiling, doing the brutal arithmetic of rent versus food. Your jazz, a temporary anesthetic for a permanent problem. They are listening because you are free and you are a distraction. You are the only luxury they can afford tonight. It's about the electric canyons of Manhattan and the steel and stone heart of a titan, and you have to read it like it's the most profound thing ever written. One part of you is the narrator, the smooth, voiced phantom floating through the airwaves. The other part is the technician, the man in the box, listening to your own enunciation, listening for any hint of a lisp, a stray sibilance that the microphone will turn into a piercing hiss, listening for the sound of your stomach, which is now, of course, choosing this exact moment to gurgle a protest. You subtly shift your weight, pressing your abdomen against the desk, hoping to muffle the treason from within. The poem goes on, and on something about the lonely song of the elevated train. You've ridden that train. The only song it sings is a screech of metal on metal, a percussion of filth and despair. The people on it don't look like poetic wanderers. They look beaten. But you sell it. You are a confidence man of the soul, and your product is a moment of counterfeit peace. A cough is coming. This is not a drill. A cough live on air would shatter the fragile illusion you've spent the last 2 hours building. It would be like a priest sneezing during the Eucharist, a moment of unforgivable human fallibility. You can't stop. You can't pause. You have to swallow it. The tickle subsides, beaten back into submission. You haven't missed a word. The audience is none the wiser. Inside, your heart is pounding from the effort. On the outside, your voice remains a placid lake. The heat in the booth is becoming unbearable. The tube amps are basically space heaters. The uncirculating air is thick and heavy, like breathing through a wet blanket. You can feel your collar wilting, your hair sticking to your forehead. Your script pages feel slick with the moisture from your fingertips. You reach the end of the poem. The final. You let the last word hang in the air for a beat. 2 beats. The microphone loves a whisper. It makes it enormous, intimate, like you're speaking directly into the listener's ear. We'll be back with some more from the Count Basie Orchestra after a brief moment of silence. You reach over and carefully, gently lift the toniarm. The hiss stops. The silence that floods back in is absolute, deafening. The red on-air light is still on. This is the moment of silence. It's not for the listeners, it's for you. A 30-second window to swap discs, to take a sip of water, to not have a coughing fit. You grab the next record. It's in a sleeve covered with handwritten notes. Skip at 1:15, one says. A. Simple. You look through the small, thick, paned window in the door of your booth. You can see into the master control room. It's empty. The night engineer is probably down the hall, asleep in a chair. You are the only living human being responsible for this signal that is currently being beamed across millions of square miles into the homes of hundreds of thousands of people. The responsibility is absurd, crushing. If you decided to just scream, right now, that scream would travel at the speed of light across 5 states. The thought is both terrifying and deeply, deeply tempting. 5 seconds left. You place your hand on the toniarm. You take another controlled, silent breath. The red light is your god, your warden, your soul. It simply burns. The hiss returns, an old, familiar friend. The opening piano notes of a Count Basie tune fill the void. Clean for now, you made it. Another tiny, invisible crisis averted. You lean back in the creaking chair. You have 2 more hours to go. 2 more hours of whispering sweet nothings to a city that is too broken to sleep. You close your eyes for a second, and you can almost feel them. All your listeners clinging to that signal, to that hiss, to that music. You are a thread, and you are holding them, just barely from drifting away into the terrifying silence of their own lives. It's the most important job in the world. The record ends. Fee thump. Hiss. Thump. Hiss. Asterisk. A tiny circular purgatory of sound for a few seconds. That's all there is in the universe. That, and the low electric prayer of the glowing vacuum tubes in the amplifier beside you. A little pocket of dead air. You are the sole custodian of their sleeplessness, their priest of the quiet hours. A lighthouse of culture in a sea of silent, concrete canyons. That's the myth. Anyway, the one they'll write in books a century from now. The reality is somewhat less poetic. The reality is the taste of stale coffee, so bitter it feels like a punishment. It's the damp patch of sweat forming in the small of your back, gluing your cheap shirt to the unforgiving wood of this straight-backed chair. It's the faint, persistent headache that lives behind your right eye, a souvenir from the flickering fluorescent bulb in the hallway. You're a guy in a box, talking into a metal mushroom, hoping a check with your name on it clears by Friday. You lean into the microphone, the immense silver grill cool against the heat of your face. It smells faintly of the man who had this shift before you. A cocktail of Old Spice, desperation, and whatever he had for dinner. Probably cabbage. It always smells like cabbage. That was the peerless Mr. Duke Ellington. You murmur. You say the words, but you're not thinking about them. You're thinking about the mechanics of it, the way your lips must be just so far from the diaphragm to avoid the plosive pop of a P, the way you have to consciously slow your breathing. The illusion of effortlessness requires a staggering amount of effort. It's exhausting. The edges are already starting to curl in the room's oppressive humidity, a product of one radiator that has 2 settings, off and volcanic tonite. It's volcanic. The script is for a new sponsor, a patent medicine. Dr. Abernathy's nerve. You scan the copy. It promises to cure everything from melancholia and female hysteria to weak digestion and a general lack of vigor. The primary ingredients you know from grim experience are about 30% grain alcohol and a bouquet of herbs that would make a goat reconsider its life choices. It's snake oil, a liquid lie in a brown bottle. Your job is to read these fraudulent claims in your most sincere, reassuring voice, to convince a woman lying awake, terrified she can't afford to feed her children tomorrow, that a swig of this overpriced booze will purify her blood and calm her nerves. You're not a poet of the airwaves. You're a high-tech carnival barker. The good news is you get paid. The bad news is you have to try and sleep at night, knowing you're selling flavored despair to the desperate. It's a masterclass in cognitive dissonance. This job, your own personal nerve tonic, is the half pint of rye whiskey tucked into your coat pocket, a companion for the long walk home through the pre-dawn gloom. You clear your throat, the sound unnervingly loud in your own ears, and prepare to sell the lie. But first, more music. You need a buffer, a musical sorbet to cleanse the palate between one beautiful truth, Duke Ellington's genius, and the ugly lie you're about to tell. You turn to the shelf of records. Nothing that might give the good people of New York any ideas. The music must be, above all, safe like lukewarm milk. You're administering a sonic sedative. You pull a record from its sleeve. But you've seen how they're made. A fragile disc of resin and slate dust, prone to cracking if you look at it too hard. You place it on the turntable, a massive belt-driven machine that looks like it was designed by a man who builds submarines. You lift the toniarm, a heavy piece of chrome and steel, and gently guide the needle toward the outer groove. This requires a surgeon's steadiness, a tremor, a cough, a sudden twitch, and you'll send a screeching scar across the music, a sound like a dying pterodactyl broadcast to 100,000 bedrooms. You've done it before. The memory of the sheer, naked panic still makes your stomach clench. The needle touches down, and there it is. That sound, that glorious, warm, crackling hiss. The sound of imperfection, the sound of rain on a tin roof. It's the sound of a promise, the promise that something beautiful is about to happen, and it does. The piano comes in, then that voice. A voice that sounds like it has lived 1,000 years, seen every kind of pain, and somehow decided to sing about it anyway. A voice that can break your heart and piece it back together. In a smoky club in Harlem, where you, with your pale skin, were the conspicuous anomaly. You remember the way the light caught the gardenia in her hair. You also remember the look in her eyes. A profound, bottomless weariness. The look of someone who knows the world is rigged, the game is crooked, and the house always wins. Yet she sings. She stands there and pours all that pain, all that knowledge, into a microphone not so different from the one you're staring at right now. Her life is not the myth of the glamorous jazz singer. It's a brutal ledger of poverty, racism, and abuse. She's creating transcendent art, and for her trouble, she has to use side entrances, eat in kitchens, and sleep in third-rate boarding houses, because the grand hotels where she performs won't rent a room to a black woman. She's pouring her soul into this record, and she'll see pennies on the dollar for it. The record executives, the club owners, the publishers, they'll get rich, she'll get by. Maybe. You listen to her sing about love keeping her warm, and you feel the sweat on your collar. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. This music, this beautiful, soulful, quintessentially American art form, is being created by people who are treated as second-class citizens in their own country. You play their music for a largely white audience, an audience that would likely cross the street to avoid the very people making the sounds that lull them to sleep. And who are they, these listeners? You close your eyes and you see them. You're not just in this padded room, you're everywhere at once. You're in a sixth. That's a fantasy reserved for movie palaces and department stores. There is only the window, wide open, letting in a breeze that feels like the breath of a panting dog. It carries with it the symphony of the city's digestive tract, the smell of rotting garbage from the cans in the alley, the clatter of a bottle breaking, the distant, mournful cry of a tugboat on the East River. A man lies on a mattress, stained with the ghosts of old sweat. He's a dock worker, or he was, until a crate of machine parts slipped and crushed his foot. There's no workers' compensation to speak of, no disability insurance. There is only the searing, throbbing pain in his mangled bones, and the even more searing, throbbing panic in his gut. How will he pay the rent? He stares at a crack in the plaster ceiling that looks like a map of a country he'll never visit. Your voice and Billy's are trickling out of a small cathedral-style radio on the nightstand. You're in a small, tidy apartment in Queens. A young woman is awake, rocking a baby with a fever. The air is thick and still. She's been sponging the child's forehead with a cool cloth for hours. The doctor came yesterday. A quick, brusque visit that cost more than a week's worth of groceries. He said it was just a summer flu. But the fever isn't breaking. Every shallow, rattling breath the baby takes is a dagger in her heart. Polio is a word whispered in terror on playgrounds and in grocery stores. These aren't historical footnotes. They are active, hungry predators. She listens to your voice, the calm, steady baritone. And for a moment, it feels like an anchor, a sign that the world outside this room is still turning. That morning will eventually come. But underneath, there is a primal, animal terror that no jazz record can soothe. You're in a rooming house in Hell's Kitchen. A young man, fresh off the bus from Ohio with a head full of dreams and a pocket full of lint, is listening on a cheap crystal set with a single earphone. He came to be a writer, an artist. He's discovered that New York is not particularly interested in his dreams. He spends his days washing dishes in the greasy heat of a diner kitchen, his hands perpetually raw and smelling of soap and old food. He lies on his narrow cot, which sags in the middle like a tired sigh, and listens to you read poetry. He tells himself this is what he came for, culture, intellect. But the words of the poem are just sounds floating over the rumble of his own empty stomach. He hasn't had a real meal in 2 days. The romance of the starving artist is a lot more romantic when you're not the one starving. The song is a lie. Love doesn't keep you warm. A working furnace keeps you warm. A steady job keeps you warm. 3 square meals a day keep you warm. Love is a luxury. A wonderful one, but a luxury nonetheless. For many of your listeners, the primary emotion keeping them warm tonight is a slow burning anxiety that borders on panic, and you are their accomplice in distraction. A 30-watt dose of escapism broadcast directly into the city's most vulnerable veins. Keep them calm, keep them distracted. Keep them from thinking too hard about the fact that the entire system is a rickety, top-heavy house of cards, and they're living in the basement. The song fades. The hiss returns. The needle goes fay-thump. Hiss, thump, hiss, fay time to earn your paycheck. The paper feels greasy under your fingertips. That was the incomparable Billie Holiday. And friends, speaking of feeling out of sorts, are you feeling tired, run down? Do you find your nerves frayed at the end of a long day? Do you suffer from a general lack of vigor? You pause. Let the question hang in the air. The remarkable restorative power of Dr. Abernathy's nerve tonic and blood purifier. You read the litany of fraudulent claims. You extol the virtues of its patented blend of natural botanicals. You talk about it as if it's the elixir of life, not a bottle of cheap hooch with some weeds thrown in. You are a good soldier. You read the lines. Because if you don't, there are 100 other guys with smooth voices who will. Guys who are just as hungry, just as tired, just as desperate to make the rent. You finish the ad read and feel a familiar wave of self-loathing wash over you. It's a feeling as constant and reliable as the hum from the amplifier. You take a sip of the cold, acidic coffee. It does nothing. Time for the poetry. Tonight, it's a piece by a young up-and. You suspect he's the manager's nephew. The poem is called Asphalt Nocturne. It's full of tired metaphors about the city's electric veins and the lonely moon being a witness to the city's heartache. It's the kind of poem that thinks it's profound but is really just a collection of vaguely sad-sounding words. You smooth the paper. The typing is sloppy, full of errors corrected with messy slashes of ink. This wasn't written by a master craftsman. It was hammered out in a fit of cheap gin and self-importance, but you will read it, and you will make it sound like Shakespeare. A new voice in the wilderness. The city breathes, a sigh of steam on steel, as the empty words fill the silence. It's the sound of a man coughing up a lung in a flophouse. The final wet rattle of tuberculosis. It's the sharp, frantic squeal of tires as a drunk driver narrowly misses a pedestrian. It's the quiet, rhythmic weeping of a woman who just received a telegram from a country she can't find on a map, telling her that her son is gone. The poem goes on about the glittering diamonds of the city lights. You think of the single, naked bulb hanging in a tenement hallway, illuminating the peeling paint and the grime. You think of the dim yellow light over a kitchen table where a family is silently eating potatoes for the 4th night in a row, because that's all there is. This whole enterprise, the music, the poetry, your voice, it's all a beautiful, intricate lie, a carefully constructed fantasy designed to make the grim, unbearable reality of life just a little more palatable. You're just the guy who keeps the anesthetic drip going. You finish the poem. You let the last word hang in the air, pretending it has weight, pretending it means something. Another record, another song. The cycle continues. You are a cog in a great invisible machine that grinds up real human pain and processes it into a soothing, marketable product. You are the voice of a dream, and just outside the door, the nightmare of 1938 waits patiently for you, and for everyone else. It will be there when the sun comes up. It will be there, waiting long after the music stops. Intro music fades in, and then fades out. Hey guys, you turn on the radio, and through the static, a voice emerges. A voice as smooth as bourbon, as cool as the other side of the pillow. It's the late-night jazz DJ, the poet of the airwaves, the solitary philosopher spinning vinyl for the city that never sleeps. He's in a smoky room somewhere high above the city, a lone beacon of culture in an ocean of darkness. It's a beautiful, romantic image, isn't it? The kind of black and white movie scene that makes you think, man, I was born in the wrong era. We're heading back to Manhattan, 1938. 2 in the morning, and we're going to step into that cozy little radio booth. We're going to debunk the myth of the effortlessly cool night caller by showing you the grim, sweaty, and deeply unglamorous reality. Because that voice of the city, that beacon of culture, he was just a guy in a hot box, praying he didn't sneeze, reading ads for questionable laxatives to make rent. It was less about artistic integrity and more about not getting fired before sunrise. As always, you think you'd love it. You wouldn't. You wouldn't last a single shift, congratulations. You are now sitting in that booth, 2 in the morning. Let's start with the room itself. In your imagination, it's probably panelled in rich, dark wood. Maybe there's a window with a rain-streaked view of the glittering skyline. Let's correct that. You're in a closet, a literal closet. A window would let in the sound of the elevated train, the distant sirens. They are covered in a thick, lumpy padding, a primitive form of soundproofing that looks like quilted burlap sacks filled with despair. It's probably a charming mixture of horsehair, industrial felt, and, for that premium 1930s touch, a healthy dose of asbestos. The room has a smell. It's a complex bouquet. The primary note is dust, old, settled, undisturbed dust that has been baked and rebaked for years. Underneath that, there is the faint, sour aroma of stale cigarette smoke from the daytime announcers, the ones with the booming voices who get to sell cars and refrigerators. And finally, there's the subtle, unnerving smell of your own slow-cooking sweat. Because there is no air conditioning. Of course there isn't. The concept of pumping refrigerated air into a non-essential space, like this, is pure science fiction. The only ventilation is a small, grimy vent in the ceiling that doesn't seem to be connected to anything. All the heat from the electronics, and oh, we'll get to the electronics, has nowhere to go. It just pools in this tiny, padded cell. The air is thick, heavy, and still. You can feel it on your skin, a damp, greasy film. It's a dead space. You can hear the soft, wet click your tongue makes against the roof of your mouth. You can hear the faint, high-pitched whistle in your ears that you never notice in the regular world. You can hear your own breathing, a constant, rhythmic shush that sounds impossibly loud. If you ate beans for dinner, you are now in a state of high alert paranoia. The silence isn't peaceful. It's accusatory. It is a void that threatens to swallow every sound you make. And you are about to make some very specific, very deliberate sounds for a living. The only light comes from 2 sources. First, there is the dim yellow glow from the dials and meters on your control board. Second, and most importantly, there is the stark, ominous red of the on-air. It's not a friendly LED. It is an incandescent bulb inside a thick glass housing, and it seems to pulse with a kind of malevolent energy. It's a constant, glowing reminder that you are live. There are no do-overs. There is no backspace key. Every sound you make, every breath, every stutter, that little red light is your God, your warden, and your executioner. A low, barely perceptible 60-cycle hum that vibrates right at the edge of your hearing. A constant electrical mantra that says, "Don't mess up. Don't mess up. Don't mess up." Asterisk. Let's look at your tools. Right in front of you, the star of the show, a massive, silver, old-style microphone. This isn't one of your modern, durable condenser mics. This is a ribbon microphone. Your voice makes it vibrate, and that vibration becomes the electrical signal that becomes your voice in 1,000 lonely rooms. The good news is, it produces an incredibly warm, rich, and intimate sound. The bad news is, it is catastrophically fragile. You don't speak fey into fey a ribbon mic. You speak fey across fey it at a slight angle. If you aim your breath directly at it and pronounce a hard P or a B, a plosive, as it is called, the resulting puff of air can stretch or even snap that delicate ribbon. So you live in constant fear of words like people, public, or broadcasting. A cough could be a career, and it hears everything. The soundproofing keeps the outside world out, but this microphone brings your inside world into terrifying focus. The rustle of your shirt sleeve against the desk. It hears it. The creak of your wooden chair as you shift your weight. It hears it. and it sounds like the groan of a dying galleon. The almost imperceptible whisper of your fingertips turning a page, it amplifies it into a loud, crackling declaration of your existence. You have to move like a cat burglar, every motion deliberate and slow. It's not a performance of cool detachment. It's a performance of pure, unadulterated anxiety. It's a heavy metal box with glowing vacuum tubes visible through a grill. These are the heart of your broadcast. They take the tiny signal from the microphone and give it the power to travel for miles. They also get hot enough to fry an egg on. The air around the amp shimmers. It has that distinctive smell of hot dust and cooking electronics, like an old television set that has been on for too long. This is the source of the low, constant hum you can feel in your teeth. That hum is the sound of the city's electrical grid, a vast, primitive network of groaning transformers and buzzing wires. Your broadcast is literally riding on a wave of this raw, untamed power. And sometimes that power surges. Sometimes a tube will flicker and die. Sometimes, if you are really unlucky, one will pop, sending a sound like a gunshot through the system, and, hopefully, not taking the entire station off the air with it. Your job isn't just to talk, it is to be a low-level electrical engineer, constantly monitoring the health of these glowing glass bottles. Now for the music. You're a jazzman. Right. A connoisseur. You're here to educate the masses, to bring the genius of Duke Ellington and Count Basie to the sleepless souls of the metropolis. That's the dream. The reality is that you are a human jukebox, and your playlist was decided hours ago by a man in a suit named Mr. Henderson, the station manager. He doesn't care about artistic expression. He cares about not offending the sponsors. So yes, you'll play some Ellington, but you'll also play you'll play some cloyingly sweet ballad for the third time tonight, because the wife of the man who owns the biggest mattress store in Queens happens to like it. You pull a record from its sleeve. It is a thick, heavy slab of shellac, not vinyl. It is brittle. You feel the grooves with your thumb. You can literally feel the music. You place it on the heavy felt of the turntable platter. There's no automatic start button. There's no gentle, hydraulically dampened tony arm. There is a heavy arm with a steel needle, and you have to pick it up with your own, slightly sweaty hand and place it gently into the lead. In groove your hand can't shake. A moment's hesitation, a slight tremor, and you'll send a sickening face screech across the airwaves. You drop the needle, and then comes that sound. That long, warms, SSSS, that gentle crackle and pop. We find it charming today. We call it warmth. For you, in 1938, it is just noise. It is surface noise. You know that with every rotation, the steel needle is literally carving the groove a little wider, shaving off a bit of the music, sanding it down into eventual silence. This isn't a nostalgic, cozy experience. It is an act of slow, methodical destruction. You are wearing out the music as you share it. The song plays. You watch the view meter, a little needle dancing behind a glass window, and you gently adjust a large Bakelite knob to keep the volume from getting too loud or too quiet. This is riding the gain. A loud trumpet solo might push the needle into the red, creating horrible distortion. A soft piano passage might get lost in the static. You are in a constant, delicate dance with the sound. The song is ending. You have about 10 seconds of silence before you have to speak. This is dead air. You clear your throat, off mic, turning your head completely away, and hoping the sound doesn't bounce off the padded walls. You lean in, at that perfect paranoid angle to the microphone. The red light glares. That was Caravan from the Duke. a real midnight sound for you lonely people out there. And speaking of lonely nights, are you having trouble sleeping? Is it because of friends? This is your real job. You have to read the copy exactly as written. You have to make it sound like you believe with all your heart in the miraculous power of Peterson's gentle fig laxative. You have to imbue the words scientifically formulated with a sense of gravitas and wonder. The ink is still slightly tacky. You imagine reading T.S. Eliot. Let us go then. That would be something, but no. The poetry you read is written by a woman named Mildred, the station owner's niece. She thinks she is Edna St. Vincent Millay. She is not. You pick up the sheet. The crinkle of the paper is a thunderclap in the microphone. The city's lights, a diamond chain, fay upon the velvet cloak of rain, fay each lonely window. A sad eye fay that watches all the world go by. You pour every ounce of your professional training into it. You modulate your voice. You pause for dramatic effect. You make it sound meaningful, profound. You are gift, wrapping garbage. And you just know that somewhere out there, someone is listening to this, and they're thinking, wow, that is beautiful. And that, somehow, is the most depressing part of all. You have no idea. There is no real time feedback. The struggling painter in his garret, the heartbroken girl staring at a telephone that won't ring, the night watchman making his lonely rounds. You are talking to a truck driver halfway to Albany, mainlining coffee and trying to keep his eyes open. You are talking to a baker covered in flour, already starting his day while the rest of the city sleeps. You are talking to an old woman whose husband's snoring is rattling the walls. You are the background noise to their exhaustion, their boredom, their quiet desperation. The only connection you have is the mail. Once a week. Some are requests for songs you are not allowed to play. Some are from lonely women some letters are from cranks. People who want to argue about politics, who think you are part of some grand conspiracy. They're written in shaky, angry script. You read them all, because they are the only proof that anyone is out there. They are your only ratings. The record ends. You fade it out with one knob while simultaneously starting the next one. On the second turntable, it's a clumsy mechanical ballet. For a moment, you are a pilot, an organist, a switchboard operator, all in one. You have 3 minutes and 10 seconds to yourself. What do? You sit back in the creaky chair. The oppressive heat washes over you again. You look at the clock on the wall. It's 2:47 a.m. You still have hours to go. You can't eat. The sound of chewing would be obscene. You just sit. You sit in the hot, silent, padded room, staring at the red light, listening to the hum of the electricity in the walls. You think about the world outside this box, a world on the edge. The depression isn't over. Not by a long shot. People are still riding the rails, still living in shantytowns. Out there, in the city you are supposedly the voice of, there is a quiet, grinding misery that your smooth voice and sweet jazz can't possibly touch. And across the ocean, in Europe, you hear things on the newswires during the day. Names like Hitler and Mussolini. The news you are allowed to read on your show is sanitized, scrubbed of anything too upsetting. Keep it light, Mr. Henderson says. Give 'em an escape. So you sit here in your soundproof womb, playing escapist music for a world that is barreling towards a cliff. You are the string quartet on the Titanic. You are Nero fiddling while Rome smoulders. Your entire job is a lie. It is the warmth of a fever. The song ends. The red light glares. makes you want to get up and dance, doesn't it? Well, friends, if aching feet are keeping you from the dance floor, another hour passes, another stack of records, another poem about moonbeams, another ad, this time for a hair tonic. You take a sip of water from a glass. You have to time it perfectly, in the space between a song ending and your voice beginning. You can hear the water sloshing in the glass, the sound of your own gulping throat. You pray the microphone doesn't pick it up. Finally, the clock ticks towards the end of your shift. You have your sign off memory. You cue up your final record, the station's official theme song, a schmaltzy orchestral number that makes your teeth ache. You wait for the last notes to fade. And that is all the time we have for tonight, friends. A green light on the board blinks, indicating the broadcast has been handed over to the master control room, which will just play static until the morning news crew arrives. And then the red on-air light clicks off. The silence that follows is different. It is a heavier, emptier silence. The hum from the amplifier seems louder now without the music to cover it. The magic, if there ever was any. You are just a tired man in a small, hot, smelly room. You stand up. You put the records back in their sleeves, stack the ad copy neatly for the next poor soul. You grab your coat from a hook on the door. It smells faintly of the room, of dust and electricity. You step out into the hallway of the radio station. The air is cool and damp, and it feels like a shock after the suffocating heat of the booth. A street sweeper is making its slow way down the block, its brushes hissing against the asphalt. A milk truck rattles by. The city is grey and quiet. The glamour is gone. You pull your collar up and start the long walk to the subway. You have no idea if anyone enjoyed your show. You have no idea if you made a difference. The only metric of your success is whether your paycheck clears at the end of the week. Think about that. The next time you listen to a podcast, the host finishes, looks at their screen, and sees a flood of comments, a list of new Patreon subscribers, a dozen super chats. They have an instant, global community. They have feedback. They have data. You have the echo of your own voice in your head, and the long, lonely walk home, that romance of the past, that smooth, solitary voice in the night. It was just a job, and the most beautiful sound you heard all night wasn't the saxophone of Lester Young or the poetry of a lonely heart. It was the click of that red light turning off.